sorry not to have been present to have followed the discussions before I make some comments. I'm just flagging a few issues of concern. There is a lot of talk about social security for the unorganized workers these days. While this is a welcome trend, I fear that social security is seen merely in terms of benefits, health schemes, maternity benefit, pensions, etc. This is a rather simplistic way of looking at labor and a rather easy way for the state to wash its hands off issues of securing work and employment. Social security is about sustaining society as a whole, maintaining the interrelationships and interconnectedness that is basic to human well-being. If we focus on social security in the unorganized sector, it has more importantly to do with right to livelihood, the guarantee of employment and access to resources. 92% of the working class is in the unorganized or informal sector. These workers have created their own employment but contribute 60% of the GDP of the nation. Securing this employment and improving the quality of life of this section of people is what social security by the state should address and contribute towards. Large sections of forest dwellers, fisherfolk, agricultural workers and pastoralists, to name a few, eke out a living from what we call common property resources: forests, rivers, the oceans, grasslands, etc. These communities had customary rights to these resources. They also had customary law as to how to utilize these resources. For instance, in tribal communities, the land was not allowed to be sold. In the northeastern states, clans also own the water and forest resources. Today, as water gets more scarce because of logging, there is tension between clans. Why should certain clans conserve the forests if the benefits are reaped by others downstream? Is there such a thing as paying for ecosystem services? And if so, how can the state help communities find solutions and remunerate the service providers for providing life and livelihood security to others? In the model umbrella legislation that was created as a part of the Second Labour Commission report, rights of access to resources is clearly mentioned in the legislation. This is because livelihood is sustained only if access to resources is also sustained. But the logic in which the traditional and capitalist production systems look at resources is very different. The focus is profit in the latter and sustainability in the former. We have also seen that resources that are looked at merely from a market and profit perspective are fast depleted and hence do not sustain either profit or livelihoods in the long run. Such a relationship to finite resources or a non-nurturing relationship to renewable resources leads to maldevelopment, what we feminists call patriarchal or violent development. Hence we need to develop a feminist perspective regarding social security, a perspective that puts life and livelihood at center stage. Social security for such a large mass of people today necessarily means upholding people's access to such resources and assisting them with new governance tools to transcend the differences that have overpowered them with the development logic of the modern state. All over the country today, the competition for these resources has destroyed the livelihoods of millions of rural people. The struggles that go on all over should be drawing our attention, What social security are we offering these people? NREGA is a social security scheme, but totally devoid of perspective in its application, as public assets are also very narrowly defined. NREGA could be used more creatively and channeled into sustaining rural livelihoods so that people's traditional skills are sustained and their products made competitive in the market. Then there is the debate on the different and decaying delivery systems. The new cash transfer system is touted as the best way to reach the targeted population. Making all calculations in terms of cash is a fallacy, I think. What is the point of cash if there is no brain? In Kerala, for example, where almost no food is produced, and where a large proportion of people would starve without the public distribution system, or be at the mercy of unscrupulous grain merchants, no cash would be sufficient to help the poor survive. Privatizing health insurance, like in the case of the RSBY, has already proven to be exploitative by the private practitioners. One wonders why this was not possible through the ESI, which would have helped build a sounder system of healthcare in the country. The ESI, which is a tripartite system and which is autonomous, would have a much sounder health delivery system for workers. Another discussion that the debate on social security takes us into is the upcoming trend related to formalizing the informal sector. When we believe we can put people into different boxes, give them an identity, then we feel we will also be able to deliver them some social security. This is also the manner in which the Labour Department goes about its work. Everybody belongs to a trade and then to a trade union. But the majority of work that particularly women do, which is all work that produces products for the market, cuts across specific trades. A woman farmer who produces vegetables for the market could also be taking milk to the market, and in certain seasons she may also be doing some weaving for her own use and for sale as well. In other cases, a woman worker may sell food in the morning and be a domestic worker in the afternoon, or a domestic worker for the early hours of the morning, and possibly a sales girl for the rest of the day. What kind of workers are these? How do we categorize them? They meet both a need as well as provide a service in different areas, making life and work dynamic and remunerative. Providing her this freedom but assuring her a living wage for an 8-hour working day should be the concern of the state. Developing social norms whereby the rest of the society gives her her due in terms of cash and respect is what thinking on social security should be considering. In the West, that went through the process of professionalization of work in the last century, we saw how work became increasingly professionalized. Workers were forced to get trained in order to pursue a trade, and it became increasingly difficult and expensive to survive as a self-employed worker. In the case of fishing, for instance, which was always a family business, the man became the fisherman, and this ousted the woman from any gains of the employment. France has succeeded to change this after 50 years, when the fisherwomen fought for recognition and now have benefits as a collaborative spouse. So formalization in terms of professionalization cannot be a blanket solution. It is therefore imperative for us to look at social security in the larger context of changes that are impacting on the matrix of our society. The right to livelihood is embedded in the Constitution, and this must be sustained at all costs. As rural land is getting taken over by the corporate sector, masses of rural poor are flocking to the cities. This trend should be curbed, as this in the long run threatens food security as well as income security for all. Hence, we should be thinking of a broad framework in which social security issues should be discussed. Its focus should be on sustaining life and livelihood. It is not sufficient for the government to speak of inclusive growth. It should make a commitment to securing ongoing livelihoods and providing the wherewithal to develop them in terms of adding value and making them sustainable. The concept of growth and development itself should be re-articulated to include social security.